It began as an ordinary afternoon at Windsor. But by the time the sun set, young Prince George's world would be shaken by a truth his family had hidden for over a decade. The day began with the soft calm of a royal gathering, polite smiles, warm tea, and stories from William's youth. Yet beneath the surface something was off. Glances between William and Catherine lingered too long. Conversation stopped when George entered the room. Even Charlotte noticed, whispering to her brother, "Why is everyone so quiet?" George tried to dismiss it, but the knot forming in his stomach told him this was no ordinary day. Later, wandering into his father's study, he noticed something in the corner, an old leather-bound box. Its dark surface was worn, the clasp tarnished, and on top, faintly etched letters, Disc, Diana Spencer. George knelt beside it, running his fingers across the cracked leather. It felt different from the polished antiques around it. This was personal. The door opened. William stepped in. His gaze went instantly to the box, his face caught between fear and resignation. Catherine appeared behind him, her hand resting on his shoulder. No one spoke, but George understood. Whatever was inside, it mattered. William moved slowly, lowering himself into a chair. His hand hovered above the clasp, trembling. Catherine's voice was soft, almost pleading. "Be gentle, William. He's still young." The metallic snap of the clasp broke the silence like a gunshot. The lid creaked open, releasing years of locked-away grief. On top lay folded letters, paper yellowed and edges worn from being read over and over. Beneath them, faded photographs, smiles frozen in time. George saw her face, his grandmother's, not the official portraits but candid moments full of warmth. Then William paused again. Wrapped in faded silk was a small bundle. His hands hesitated before unfolding it. Inside was a single envelope. The handwriting was unmistakable. Elegant, graceful. Read, "To my darling son." George felt his breath catch. The date in the corner was only weeks before the night she died. William's voice was quiet, almost breaking. "I've never shown this to anyone outside the family. Not the press. Not even close friends. This was the last thing she wrote to me." He unfolded the letter. The first line alone pierced the room with its tenderness. Diana's words poured out, pride in the man William was becoming, hope that he would lead with kindness, and a plea for her children to live free from the cages of royal expectation. It was raw, unfiltered, a voice reaching across time. When William finished, the room was silent. George sat frozen, the letter's weight pressing into his heart. This wasn't just history, it was family. And for the first time, he understood. The legacy of Diana wasn't in crowns or titles. It was in the love she left behind, and the truths she hoped would one day be set free. It was as if she knew her days were numbered, and wanted to leave behind something eternal. But then her tone shifted. Between the lines of love lay threads of unease, warnings woven into her affection. She urged William to be strong if ever he found himself under pressure, to protect those he loved from the shadows that move without faces. One line in particular hung in the air like a storm cloud. "I feel I am being watched, and I don't know how long I have." George's fingers gripped the edge of the table, the meaning of those words sinking into him like a slow, cold tide. He had grown up on the public's version of Diana, the charitable princess, the beloved mother taken too soon. But this was different. This was not the polished memorial tale. This was his grandmother speaking from the edge of something far darker. For the first time, he felt the possibility that her death had not been the tragic accident the world claimed it was. That perhaps the whispers he'd overheard, the conspiracy-tinged rumors the family never addressed, carried more truth than anyone wanted to admit. As William's voice faltered, George reached for the letter, clutching it as if letting go would erase her words. His first tears came silently, not the tears of a boy hearing a sad story, but of someone whose identity had just been rewritten. Then William drew out a photograph. At first glance, it was nothing unusual. Diana holding a young William at a charity event, her smile radiant and real. But something in the background caught George's eye. Behind the cheerful crowd, partially obscured, stood a man he didn't recognize. His expression was blank, his stance rigid. His eyes, unmistakably, were fixed on Diana. George asked who he was. William's face changed instantly, the warmth fading from his eyes. He admitted the same man appeared in several of Diana's final public photographs, always in the background, always watching. Whispers in the palace at the time tied him to a quiet investigation Diana had been conducting in the months before her death, an investigation she had shared with almost no one. The words from her letter, "I feel I am being watched," now echoed louder. This wasn't the romanticized story the public adored. This was something far more dangerous. George's pulse quickened. He wanted answers. But before he could press, Catherine stepped in, gently steering the conversation back toward lighter memories. George, however, couldn't look away from the man in the photograph. Then William reached beneath the letters and photographs and froze. In his hand was a small cassette tape, its casing dulled by time, its label faded to near nothing. He didn't need to read it. He knew. "Your grandmother made this for me and Harry," William said quietly, "so we would have her voice, if she couldn't be there." He placed the tape into a small player kept nearby for moments when the past refused to stay buried. The soft crackle gave way to a voice George had only heard in public speeches, but here it was warmer, intimate. "My darling boys," Diana began, her tone tender but laced with urgency. She spoke of the joy they gave her, of dreams for their futures, lives free from the chains of expectation. But as the minutes passed, her words grew cautious. She spoke of pressures within the palace walls, of politics that reached into every corner of her life. She never named names, but there was tension in her voice when she spoke of those who will not let me go quietly. Hints of conflicts, decisions that had angered powerful people. The knowledge she was walking a path many wanted her off, permanently. George's hand found Catherine's. She squeezed back, but her eyes betrayed the same unease that now lived in his. It was one thing to read her fears. It was another to hear them, alive, trembling, on tape. Every pause, every wavering breath was a shadow of the danger she'd felt closing in. And then, just before the tape cut off, her voice lowered almost to a whisper. "If anything happens to me, you must look for the truth. It's there, closer than you think." The room fell silent. The player clicked off. George stared at his father, his pulse pounding. He knew now, whatever had happened to Diana was no accident. And the man in that photograph might still be out there. Every tremor in her recorded words carried the danger she had once felt. William sat still, jaw set, eyes betraying the grief he tried to contain. Hearing her voice again was not easy, especially knowing what came just weeks after she spoke those words. Yet he let George listen because shielding him now would feel like betrayal. When the tape clicked off, silence hung heavy. George stared at the player as if it might speak again. But it had said enough to shake him. And yet the most devastating truth was still to come, from William himself. For years, William had protected George from the darker truths of his family's history. He had spoken of Diana's warmth and kindness, but not of her fears or the dangers she sensed. Now, with her voice still echoing, he told his son about the night he learned she had died. Officially, it was called an accident. But doubts had grown over the years, unanswered questions, strange details. Diana had feared for her life, William said, not from fate, but from choices she made that challenged those who valued silence over truth. George's tears came heavier now, not only for her loss but for the loss of innocence. The world was no longer simple. William embraced him, telling him Diana would have been proud of his compassion and courage. Then came one final keepsake, wrapped in silk, a tiara unlike any George had seen. Elegant yet understated, it was made in Diana's last year, not for herself but for William's future wife. Finished just weeks before her death, it had been hidden away to protect it from palace disputes. Catherine touched it, her eyes shining, not for its value but for what it meant, Diana's blessing reaching across time. For George, it was proof she had been thinking of their future, even in her final days. In that moment, he vowed to honor her, not by dwelling on tragedy, but by living her values of compassion and courage. By nightfall, George was no longer the same boy. He now carried her voice, her warnings, her love. William told him truth must be carried with care because once spoken, it cannot be taken back. Diana's legacy was not guarded by protocol. It was alive in the people she touched and the courage she showed. Later, alone in his room, George looked at her photograph. Tonight, she felt less like a distant figure and more like someone who had known the risks and chosen to act anyway. Father and son now shared an unspoken understanding. The world would never know the full truth. But George knew, and he would carry it with dignity. Because in Buckingham Palace, the past never truly sleeps, and some truths echo louder with each generation. Wow, what a moment. If you've made it this far, you're clearly as shocked as we are. So tell me, whose side are you on? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'm reading and replying to as many as I can. And if this showdown had you hooked, smash that like button. It's the fastest way to tell YouTube you want more drama like this. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell because trust me, the next video we're working on is even more explosive. Bigger names, bigger stakes, and a twist no one will see coming. You do not want to miss what's coming next.